Hi everyone, welcome back to TMP Travel. Well, we were recently in a position where for various reasons we had to book a last-minute cruise. I'm talking within a few days of actually departing on the cruise, and it was in late August, a time when there is very little available. Now, we were a little worried about this cruise because we hadn't done a lot of research on the ship, but the ship is 20 years old and it doesn't have any specialty dining. And we ultimately felt like we could take this risk because of the port-heavy itinerary of the ship, where we had the ability to eat lunch in port every single day if we wanted to. So we wound up booking an inside cabin on the MSC Opera, one of the oldest ships in the MSC fleet, one of the smallest, and a ship with no specialty dining, sailing in the Mediterranean, which means it's going to be a primarily European majority cruise with very few English speakers on board. And what that means is it's just a little harder to connect with your fellow passengers when you don't speak their language, and culturally things are going to be a little different than what we're used to, primarily sailing on American branded cruise ships. But we're pretty open-minded and we're willing to always try new cultural experiences, and this was definitely a shift for us. There was a lot of things that were quite a bit different from what we're used to on cruise ships in the past. So we wanted to share with you what some of those differences were. Some of those differences were great, some of them we could have lived without, but overall we found this was a very interesting experiment for us, and we had a really good time on the MSC Opera. So we'll start with the ship itself. The MSC Opera was built in 2003. Christened in 2004 by Sophia Loren, and was in 2015, it was completely renovated. It was lengthened. There was a whole bunch of new features added to the ship to kind of modernize it. Having said that, they did not add any specialty dining. And we were a little worried about this because after a cruise we did in the MSC Grandiosa a couple of years ago, we found that the food in the main dining room and the buffet was not to our taste at all. And we wound up eating in specialty dining restaurants every single day on that cruise after the first day. And actually, we found the specialty dining to be really, really good and somewhat affordable. And the second time we cruised on MSC was on the Meraviglia, and we went with the yacht club that time, so we didn't have to worry about the main dining room. Our other concern about the MSC Opera was the age of the ship, built in 2005. It has had a renovation recently, but we were still concerned that the ship was going to be old and dated. Now, we were very interested in the main dining room. When we first got our dinner seating, we thought we had the late seating because it was 7:30. We found out when we got on board that there was actually a 10 o'clock seating as well. I don't think I've ever seen a 10 o'clock dinner seating on a cruise ship before, but I can tell you that 10 o'clock dinner seating was busier than our 7:30 seating, and it was full of these kids who were mostly, like I say, 5 and under. It is culturally very different from what we're used to on mostly North American cruise lines we've cruised on in the past. Now, the food in the main dining room wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Actually, some nights it was very good, other nights it was okay, but it was never terrible, and we were always satisfied when we left. One of the things we've learned cruising on MSC in the past is to stick with Italian food whenever possible. So pizza for lunch with a salad or pasta at dinner is a good bet. We did end up eating a lot of pasta. One of the good things about the dining room was we were able to get decent wines by the glass and European wines by the glass, which are wines we prefer over North American wines. Contrast that to the Celebrity Edge we sailed on last year, who had a very limited selection of wine, unless you decided to do a specialty wine tasting, which you had to pay extra for. Another thing that we liked on the MSC Opera was the desserts. The Italians certainly know how to make a good piece of cake and puddings and so forth, and we really enjoyed the assortment of desserts. Though for some reason they didn't seem to know what a teaspoon was. So although we were one of only a few English speakers on board, or at least that's how it felt, otherwise the demographics of the ship were pretty evenly spread. There were a lot of multi-generational families on board, so grandparents, parents. There was a lot of young people on board, a lot of kids, and while we're not big fans of ships that are overrun with kids, in this case, it really wasn't too many, and it really felt like it was a nice, well-rounded demographic on board the ship, and it didn't feel too crowded either. There always was a place for us on the deck to grab some sun loungers. There was always a place inside in the evening to find a little table to have a drink at as well. Entertainment in the evening was interesting. At 11:30 at night, there were cha-cha lessons going on the pool deck. Whole families involved in learning the cha-cha. And this went on just about every night we were on board. Everyone seemed to be having a really great time. Anyway, the poolside cha-cha lessons seem to be very popular, and it was really cool to see families all out having fun together late at night. And one nice thing about the Opera is that being a smaller ship, it tends to visit ports where larger ships can't get in, and so we were often in port with smaller ships like you see here, which means the ports we were in were far less crowded than they would otherwise be. So when there was something like this cool turtle over the side of the dock, there wasn't a million other people trying to see it with you. And we've traveled a lot through Europe, so we've seen a lot of the big cities and the major tourist capitals. So it's actually really nice for us to putter around and see some of the smaller towns that are far less crowded. Entertainment on board the Opera and on most MSC ships is really geared towards Europeans, in particular Italians. The Opera was no exception to this, and we didn't see much in the way of entertainment on the ship for this reason. In addition to the entertainment not being great, there's also the issue of everything being said in about 6 languages, which tends to drag things out. There was occasionally some good entertainment going on around the ship, like these entertaining acrobats, but if entertainment is high on your priority list, I would not recommend the MSC line in general for you, and specifically not one of these older ships. It was actually far more entertaining being on the pool deck in the evening and watching the families and everyone enjoy the various dance lessons going on. So was this a good idea? Was sailing on the MSC Opera, an old, small ship in an Italian fleet, a good idea? Well, on the positive side, it was low cost, it was a small ship, it was a very different culture we got to experience. The ship was in relatively good repair for an old ship. It had been recently renovated, and there was the opportunity to visit smaller ports that were less crowded and places that we had never been before. On the negative side, the entertainment was quite poor, the food was average, and there was very few options for eating, and it was not terribly social as we are English speakers and there weren't too many of those on the ship. Maybe I'm being too harsh on the food. There was some good Italian food on board if you tended to stick with pizza, pasta, and salads, but a lot of the other food was just okay. So would we cruise on the MSC Opera again? No, we would not, and we would not probably cruise on any older MSC boat like this that's old and small and we know is going to be predominantly Europeans, particularly Italians, and that's not because of any problem we have. Actually, our fellow cruisers were pretty easy to deal with. The children in particular seem better behaved to me than many children I've seen on cruise ships in the past. The reason we wouldn't do it again is strictly that this cruise really is not made for us, and we're really judging it by our own North American standards most of the time. So while we did enjoy ourselves, that really might come down to our ability to really have a good time no matter what's going on. The service was never bad. The food was never bad. The ship was in a good state of repair, and we feel like we got good value for what we paid for. So for us, I think we're going to continue to look for other cruise options in the future. However, I wouldn't not recommend this to someone who's looking for a change of pace and a different cultural experience and just a different way of experiencing cruising. Hope you enjoyed this video and a window into a world of cruising that not many English-speaking people go through. If you're interested in seeing more content on MSC, we've got a couple other videos here you can click on. We had an experience on the MSC Meraviglia and the MSC Grandiosa, which were very, very different from this cruise as they're newer ships, and I would recommend to English-speaking passengers who are looking for great value. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to give this video a like if you found this information helpful, and please subscribe so you can see future cruise content.